The first shot shattered the silence. Ridgeway High had just begun its Monday morning hum, lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking down the polished floors, teachers greeting students with half-sipped coffees and well-worn smiles. The kind of morning no one remembers, until it turns into the one they never forget. Daniel Reed was mopping outside the gym when it happened. His hand paused mid-stroke. His eyes, those war-weathered eyes, narrowed as every nerve in his body stood alert. 1 second of stillness, and the screams came. Lockdown. This is not a drill. The intercon's panic-strangled voice cracked through the hallways. Papers fluttered. Doors slammed. Somewhere far off, a child cried out. Daniel dropped the mop. Most people saw him as the janitor with a limp and a quiet smile. They didn't know the limp came from a roadside bomb in Kandahar, or that his smile had learned to hide 1,000 ghosts. What they didn't know saved lives today. He moved fast, ignoring the burn in his leg. Down the hall, past the admin office, he saw blood. The glass door was shattered. A body slumped behind the desk. Amanda, the receptionist. Her red nails still glossy. He felt the grief punch his chest, but he pushed forward. Grief could wait. The living needed him now. He grabbed the walkie off the wall and pressed the button. This is Daniel Reed. Shooters in the building. Front office down. Lock all rooms. Stay silent. Police en route. His voice was even, calm, like he was back in uniform. Somewhere, he knew teachers were clinging to that voice, that tone, that sense that someone capable was still moving through the storm. He turned and ran. Every hallway, every classroom, he swept like it was a battlefield. He didn't have a gun, just his memory, and a terrifying clarity that combat breeds. He peeked into room 107 empty. The next door opened, a terrified teacher peeking out. Get them into the closet. Turn off the lights. Barricade. 3 knocks to open. Only 3. She nodded, pale and trembling. He moved on. Then he reached the library. The door was ajar. Books scattered across the floor, like someone had fled in a hurry. He pushed inside, careful. That's where he saw them, 20 or more students, crouched behind shelves. Some crying, some frozen. One girl stood in front of them, a hand extended like she was trying to shield them. Her name clicked in his mind. Emma Walters, journalism kid, wrote a piece on him last fall. Called him the custodian who sees everything. She turned and gasped. Mr. Reed? Into the vault, he whispered, pointing toward the reinforced storage room behind the stacks. Now, everyone, quiet. He herded them in. Emma was the last to go, her breath short and scared. Is it real? Is someone actually? Yes. He didn't elaborate. Once they were inside, he dragged a heavy table in front of the library doors. His leg throbbed, sweat pouring down his back, but he didn't stop. He positioned himself against the wall, near the handle, listening. Seconds passed. Then footsteps. One set, slow, deliberate. His mind flicked back to Kandahar. A night raid. A compound. He could almost smell the dust, feel the weight of his rifle. But this wasn't a raid. It was a school. These weren't soldiers, they were children. The footsteps stopped. Just outside, he held his breath. His hands tightened into fists. A long pause. Then the faintest rattle of the door handle. He didn't move. The handle clicked again. Whoever was out there was testing, listening, hunting. Then silence. He waited. 10 more seconds. 20. Gone. Inside the vault, the kids huddled in darkness. Emma held a younger student's hand. She was shaking, but her mind was racing. Why was the janitor doing this? How did he know what to do? Daniel pressed his ear to the floor. Nothing. He moved to the window. Police sirens, faint but approaching. Help was coming, But not fast enough. His radio crackled. Shooter last seen. Near the east stairwell. One confirmed down. Possible second suspect. Second? His stomach dropped. He pressed the button. Read. Library secured. 23 students inside. I'm staying put. He turned back to the door. The hallway was silent again, but it didn't feel empty. Inside the vault. Emma leaned close to a boy beside her. He's not just the janitor, she whispered. He's something else. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, sweat dripping into his eyes. He allowed himself one breath. Just one. That's when he heard it, footsteps again. This time, heavier, faster, coming. Back, and they weren't alone. The hallway lights flickered as Daniel pressed his back against the cold wall, breath shallow, ears straining. Two sets of footsteps this time, one light, fast, erratic. The other, heavy, deliberate. The realization hit him like ice. There wasn't just one shooter. His pulse hammered. His hands trembled not from fear, but from calculation. Two threats meant more unpredictability. He needed eyes, intel, anything. But all he had was instinct, and the memory of past battles that smelled like dust, diesel, and blood. Inside the vault, Emma tried to steady her breath. The younger kids were crying softly now, their whimpers barely audible over the hum of the emergency lights. She pressed her hand against the metal door, straining to hear anything. Every second felt like a ticking bomb. She replayed Daniel's words in her mind. 3 knocks. Only 3. She whispered the rule to the others again, her voice calm, despite the panic crawling inside her chest. Somewhere deep in her gut, something shifted responsibility. She wasn't just hiding anymore. She was helping him protect them. Daniel eased closer to the library entrance, crouching low. The footsteps had stopped again. That silence, the same kind he remembered from Afghanistan, was always worse than the noise. It meant someone was waiting, watching, planning. He peered through the crack in the doorframe. Empty hallway. But he knew better. This was a hunt, and he was the prey that wouldn't run. Back in Kandahar, they called him the Wall. Not because he was unbreakable, but because he refused to move until the job was done. The kind of man who shielded others with his body, who stood firm while others ducked. That spirit hadn't left him. Not when he came home. Not today. A faint creak echoed from down the corridor. Room 114, the art room. He moved toward it, soft steps, body low. His training kicked in like it had never left. Every sound was a clue. Every shadow, a question. Inside the art room, he found the door slightly ajar. He listened first. A quiet sob. A muffled voice. Movement. He pushed it open slowly. 3 figures. Miss Harrow, the art teacher, gagged and tied to a chair. 2 students near her, one barely 10, the other a senior. Between them stood a young man, early 20s, mask pulled up, a trembling pistol in hand. Daniel's breath caught. The boy's eyes were wild, unfocused. He was sweating, muttering. To himself, there was something broken in him. Something desperate. Don't move, the gunman snapped, pointing the weapon directly at Daniel. Daniel raised his hand slowly. Voice, low, steady. I'm not here to hurt you. My name's Daniel. I work here. I know who you are, the boy snarled. The janitor, right? Always watching. Daniel didn't flinch. You're scared. I get it. But this doesn't have to end the way you think. The boy's lip curled. No one listened to me. Not them. Not you. Daniel stepped forward. Just a little. Then talk to me now. The boy's hands shook. They laughed at me. All of them. You think I wanted this? Daniel glanced to the side tools on a counter, art supplies scattered, a heavy sculpture stand leaning near a desk. He needed to buy time. To get the hostages out. I believe you, Daniel said. I believe you didn't want this. But you still have a choice. The boy's eyes flickered. You think this is a choice? Then a click. From the back storage closet, another figure emerged. Another young man, dressed similarly, this one calmer. More dangerous. He's stalling. The second gunman said coldly, "We end this, now." The room shifted. The panic in Miss Harrow's eyes grew wild. One of the kids started to sob. Daniel's mind raced. 2 shooters. One close, one armed and steady. He needed a distraction. He took a slow breath. "What's your name?" he asked the first gunman. The boy hesitated. Zach, Daniel repeated, voice soft. "Look at me. You can stop this. You can be better than this moment." Zach blinked, conflicted. The second shooter raised his gun. "Move, and I drop him." Daniel didn't move. He didn't blink. But he was already calculating the angles, the weight of the sculpture stand, the few steps he'd need. His body remembered things his brain didn't have time to explain. "Please." Zach whispered to his partner. "Let me talk." "No more talking," the second snapped. "Too late for that." Daniel saw it. The crack in their unity. The shift in Zach's shoulders. The second gunman had control, but barely. So Daniel moved. He grabbed the stand and hurled it. Not at the gunman, but at the overhead lights. Glass shattered, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Screams erupted. The second shooter fired missed. Daniel was already across the room, tackling Zach, pinning him to the floor, shouting, "Run!" To the others. Ms. Harrow and the 2 students bolted toward the door. But the second gunman didn't follow. He vanished back into the shadows. Daniel held Zach down, panting. "You're done. You hear me? You're done." Zach didn't fight. He didn't scream. He just whispered, "I didn't know it'd be like this." Outside, more sirens now. Closer. Still not enough. Daniel stood, blood dripping from a graze on his arm. His leg burned, but he moved to the door, eyes scanning. Second shooter was still out there. And he had hostages. Daniel ran. His boots pounded the linoleum, blood oozing from the torn flesh of his arm. Pain screamed with every movement, but he welcomed it. It meant he was alive, meant he could still act. Behind him, Zach lay subdued in the art room, sobbing into his sleeves. But the second shooter was out there, and the sound of shouts and chaos meant he wasn't finished. He turned the corner into the science wing, just as a door slammed ahead. Lab 3. Daniel slowed. The hallway was lined with glass. Display cases full of fossils, diagrams, student projects that suddenly felt absurd in their innocence. He pressed against the wall, crouched low, listening. Inside the lab, muffled cries. A voice, angry, unstable. He eased closer. The small square window on the door revealed the scene inside. 7 students and Mr. Dobbins, the chemistry teacher, pushed into a corner. The gunman stood between them and the entrance, holding a pistol tight in both hands. His face, exposed now, was eerily calm, more dangerous than Zach's wild fear. This one had control, purpose. Daniel's throat went dry. He didn't know this kid. Not personally. But there was something familiar in his posture, the way he moved, the precision. A soldier? No, too rigid, but trained. Maybe not by military, but by resentment and obsession. That kind of training ran deep. The shooter yelled something Daniel couldn't hear, jabbing the gun toward Mr. Dobbins. The teacher raised his hands, trying to keep the students behind him. Brave, foolish, desperate. Daniel backed away from the window, heart hammering. He had no weapon, no leverage, but he had time. Maybe seconds. He clicked on the walkie quietly. Reed, shooter in Lab 3. 7 hostages. Room is locked. Requesting. Immediate tactical team. A crackle then. ETA 5 minutes. Too long. He looked down at his bleeding arm, the torn sleeve. Then back at the door. No time. He stepped into view of the window and knocked 3 short raps. The gunman turned, startled, and aimed. Daniel raised his hands. Slowly, calmly. "I'm unarmed," he said, loud enough to be heard through the door. "I just want to talk." The gunman moved to the door, pointed the weapon directly at Daniel's face through the glass. "Back up. I'm not here to stop you," Daniel replied, voice even. "But I need you to hear me." The shooter stared at him, lips trembling, jaw clenched. "You know who I am?" Daniel asked. Silence. "I clean the halls. You've seen me for years. I've seen you too." That got a reaction. A blink. "You don't have to do this," Daniel said. "Whatever happened, however much it hurt, this isn't the end of your story. It doesn't have to be." The shooter's grip faltered. "Just slightly." "They laughed at me," he said, voice cracking through the glass. "No one listened. No one." "I'm listening now," Daniel said softly. "I'm not a teacher. I'm not a cop. I'm just a man who's made mistakes. But I know pain. I know what it feels like when the world turns cold." Inside the lab, the students stared at Daniel. Mr. Dobbins was holding back tears. "I've seen death, son," Daniel continued. "Real death, in deserts far from here. And I came home with ghosts. But none of them haunt me more than the ones I couldn't save." The shooter's face tightened. "You think I care about saving anyone?" "I think you care more than you admit," Daniel replied. "You stayed. You didn't run. That means something." "I can't go back," the shooter said, shaking now. "It's too late." "It's not," Daniel whispered. "You can still choose who you are. Right now. In this moment." A beat. The gun lowered. Just a few inches. Then the world shattered. A loud crash from down the hallway. A door, slamming. Open. Shouting. Boots. Radios. The shooter flinched, raising the weapon again. His hand shaking violently. His eyes locked onto Daniel's. "No!" Daniel shouted, slamming his palm against the glass. "Don't do it." But the gun turned, not toward the students, toward himself. Daniel's scream tore through the air. As the shot rang out, the body crumpled. Inside the lab, the students burst into tears. Mr. Dobbins dropped to his knees. Daniel crashed through the door as officers swarmed in behind him. But it was already over. Blood spread beneath the shooter's body, dark and final. The silence that followed was unbearable. Daniel stood still, shaking, not from adrenaline, but from grief. He had tried. God, he had tried. A medic checked the hostages. Another officer gently pulled Daniel back, guiding him to sit against the wall. "You did everything you could," the officer said, but Daniel didn't answer. He was staring at the boy's body. In that moment, he wasn't thinking about victory or survival. He was thinking about how young the shooter looked up close. How behind every monster was a kid no one saved in time. The sirens still wailed outside. But inside, the noise faded, and Daniel felt the full weight of what it meant to survive. Rain fell softly the next morning, washing the chalk lines from the sidewalk outside Ridgeway High. The American flag flapped at half-mast, heavy with silence. Inside the building, the halls stood empty, lockers closed, bells disabled. Classes had been canceled. Grief, however, had not. Daniel sat alone in the faculty lounge, his arm wrapped in gauze, uniform stained, boots muddy from pacing the perimeter. No one had asked him to come in, but staying home felt impossible. He wasn't just a janitor anymore, not to them. Not after yesterday. He gripped a paper cup of cold coffee in one hand, a folded note in the other. It had been left anonymously. On his locker. The handwriting was small and uncertain. "Thank you for saving my sister. You're the bravest man I'll never meet." No signature. Just raw, honest gratitude from someone he'd protected without ever knowing their name. He folded the note again and slipped it into his breast pocket, right over his heart. The door creaked open. Emma stepped in, clutching a notebook to her chest. Her eyes were red, but clear, determined. "You shouldn't be alone," she said gently. Daniel didn't look up right away. Neither should any of them. She nodded and sat across from him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Emma finally broke it. "I'm writing the article for the school site, and probably more than that. Reporters keep calling. I'm not interested in attention," he said, a little too quickly. "I know," she replied. "That's why it matters." He looked at her, really looked. She had changed. There was a gravity in her now, something older than her 16 years. She had seen something no one her age should ever have to see, and instead of retreating, she was using her voice. "I remember what you wrote before," Daniel said softly. "The custodian who sees everything." Emma smiled faintly. "Turns out you do." He let the silence settle again before asking, "How are the others? Physically okay? Emotionally?" "I don't know. Scared, tired, grateful." He nodded. "All fair." She leaned forward. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. You didn't have to do all that. You could have waited for the police. Hid like everyone else." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I didn't come back from war to stand by when kids were in danger. I made a promise once, in a school overseas, to children crying under rubble. I swore if I ever got out alive, I'd never ignore the sound of a child's scream. Not ever." Emma's eyes brimmed again, but she held steady. "You kept that promise." "I tried." She opened her notebook. "May I quote you?" He shook his head. "Just tell the truth. That's enough." Later that afternoon, the school held a private assembly in the gym. No news crews, no podiums. Just families, faculty, and student survivors, all of them. The principal called Daniel up, but he hesitated. The crowd parted for him slowly, reverently, as he walked forward with his limp echoing through the stillness. He stood center court, under the flickering lights, surrounded by people who now saw him completely. "I won't speak long," he said. "But I'll say this. I wore a uniform for 20 years. It gave me medals, ranks, but no moment in uniform ever mattered more than the moment I chose to protect you without one." He looked out at the faces, some tear-streaked, some staring with admiration, some just stunned by his presence. "This school," he continued, "isn't bricks or walls or bells. It's you. And when someone came to break that, you stood together, even in fear, even in pain. You're stronger than you know." He stepped back, no applause, just silence. And then, one by one, students stood. Emma first, then the others. Dozens rising, silently honoring the man who had stood for them when no one else could. Later, when the gym emptied and dusk crept in, Daniel found himself in front of the library. A tarp covered something tall and square near the entrance. Emma approached again, this time with the art teacher by her side. Miss Harrow gently removed the tarp, revealing a mural painted in vivid, bold strokes. It was Daniel, standing before the library doors, arms wide as if shielding unseen lives behind him. The hallway behind him glowed, bathed in warm light. In the corner, small silhouettes of children huddled in safety. Above it, the words, "Not all heroes wear capes. Some carry keys." Daniel stared at it, unmoving. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered. "We know," Emma said. "That's why it's real." He didn't cry. Not then. but he felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been locked tight for years. The next morning, Daniel was back at work before dawn. The mop in his hand felt heavier, now not with burden, but with purpose. Students passed him with quiet nods, a few stopping to say thank you. Teachers hugged him. One left a thermos of hot coffee on his cart dock. As the bell rang, Daniel paused. The halls buzzed back to life. Lockers slammed. Sneakers squeaked. The hum of normalcy returned. But nothing would ever be quite the same again. And Daniel Reed, once invisible, was exactly where he needed to be.